And in theory, we are live. And I'm just waiting to get confirmation back from YouTube of that fact. And there we are, live as promised. So let me get back over here. Welcome everybody to today's edition of the Toltec Discussions with Golden Eagle. I'm your host, Golden Eagle. And this here is my lovely audience. Smile and wave, lovely audience. One of the audience just ran away. That was our curious cat, Lamina. I know it's rare to hear about a cat that's actually curious, but apparently it happens.
Because they all get killed.
So how's everyone doing? How have you been lately with the energies of the universe?
There's a lot of confusion in that universe right now. Everything feels like retrograde.
Really? Tell me more about that.
I just think it's a ripple pattern of what our administration's doing and on their minions. And it's just rippling down, and I think it's caused the populations in our country, in all the cities and states, to be kind of baffled.
Why do you think that's happening?
That's what they want.
Who's they?
The Minister 45 and his attorneys.
Really? That's where you think it's coming from? Really?
I think in the country too, and Russia.
Now relate President Trump and Russia. Why would you just automatically pull those out?
Because Russia wants discord, and they, for example, they want California to break from the Union. And
Trump and Putin are the highest level that you can see of something being manipulated.
Well, it's not just those two, it's other countries too.
Other countries?
Mm-hmm. There's 4 other countries that were manipulating things too, and the Spanish government's come forward with it, and the English government's come forward with evidence for Mueller, and I think the Italian too, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so what else is going on? Anybody? Anybody online, feel free to type in the chat. In order to do that, you have to log in to your YouTube account and or your Gmail account and then go to YouTube, because YouTube and Gmail are, well, let's just say YouTube and Gmail are in bed together. They formally merged. So it's like being legally married, not just sleeping together. So it's okay. But what else? That's all you see is there's discord and chaos because the politicians are monkeying with things. That's what you think.
Also the big corporations are too.
Oh, the big corporations are in on it. Really? Big corporations are manipulating the government? Really? What else?
I've used the term that it seems like when you come out of retrograde, Mercury retrograde, and there's like this kind of scramble to get caught up. You know, it's like all of a sudden people become awake, and then they're scrambling to figure out what's going on and so forth. So you're seeing a lot of that physically going on. But you mentioned a ripple effect, and you know what I was thinking of coming from the government, but I see it more on a level of shifting energies, you know, in that way. and I don't remember where I heard this recently. This might have been via Golden Eagle, via K-Blind, but it's like the shields are coming down, and there's this, watery, warpy kind of fluid, not sure where it's going to land kind of feeling, like basically we've been taken off an autopilot, and now we're, but there's an elusiveness to it, it's just kind of shifting about.
Yeah. I think the whole the tonal's been revealed for what it is, and more. I think what's going on with the administration, the corporations, city governments, and racism is a real big one, and the NRA and guns is another good one. I think people are becoming awake on some level.
Well, now I think you're starting to get a little closer to what's really going on.
Yeah, is the tonal is being revealed for what it is, because the veil is coming down, and people are aghast. It's like all of a sudden they've been asleep in a chamber for a long time, and they come out and they're going, oh my God. It's like when prisoners get out of prison and they see how much life has changed when they've been in prison for 30 years. That's sort of like the effect that's going on now.
So, yeah, you're getting closer to what's really going on. And yes, the tonal is involved, but so is the Nawal.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of physical effects as well as mental/emotional effects right now, because what you're seeing and what's going on is, yes, there is a change in Earth energies right now. This is way bigger than Trump. It's way bigger than Putin. It's way bigger than the oligarchy pulling their strings.
Right.
It's way bigger than just the innate intelligence of the planet, our Mother Earth. It's bigger than Gaia. It's the interaction between Gaia and the universe. Okay? So our planet, it's a gradual process over the last 10 to 20 years or so. We have been entering a region in space known as the photon belt. It may have other technical scientific names. And this happens every 13,000 years, and it lasts for approximately 2,000 years. It's based on a very physics-based, astronomy-based phenomenon of an energy beam that's leaving the center of our galaxy going in opposite directions without a water glass in its hand. I'm drinking the water because I'm waiting for my tea to cool. And that's part of the process of transformation of the planet and humanity. So every 13,000 years we go through this, and there's a time of great transition. This energy is part of, not the only thing, but part of what's causing this veil to come down that you're describing. And what this is we are getting closer to the Nawal. So for a period of time, that gap between the tonal and the wall is thinning. And we are being exposed to some of the higher radiations of the background chaos. So this is basically the opposite side of the veil, the opposite side of our assemblage point, if you want to use the Toltec terminology. So the same way when you come into the shaman's chamber and we crank up the radiations a little, which we do in an esoteric fish group like this, you will experience these energies. Sometimes they will put you to sleep. You'll be all attention, all of a sudden something happens, and then 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes later, oh man, how long was I out? And at some level, you're consciously aware of what was being said, but you don't remember anything, right? So like Coyote, my teacher, when he does his art form of the telling, this happens. You were both at the invocational dinner, what, a month ago-ish? I don't remember the exact date.
28th. So it was just over a month ago.
Yeah. There were 2 or 3 people in the room who were doing that, if you noticed. Okay, I did, because it's my job to. And they were some of the newer people. Had periods of time where they were like, hey, you guys did fine. You're higher up the experience ladder. So the level of energies that we bring in, that we work with the lineage to bring into any particular event, is suitable for the audience at hand, for the intent. And some of you did a great job in there. You got everything in that event. But these energies, not everybody can handle them. You guys have been training shamanically for 10 years or more. I don't know the exact start date of yours.
Longer than that.
Yeah. So, but for you, it's about 10 years. For me, it's about a year less or so. Oh, I'm supposed to put this cough drop in my mouth. I'm waving it. It's like a magic wand. Nobody cough. Nobody cough. Nobody cough. Oh. So imagine the effects out there in the world of the average person, the average blue pillar, who is suddenly starting to be exposed to the Nawal, to those radiations. What is the reaction of the biological machine, the ego, mind? Ego, think of that as the mind of the biological machine. It has a very important job to do, the ego. It keeps us alive. If we didn't have a strong functioning ego, we would be wiped out quickly in this world. And it doesn't matter into what tribe you're born. It doesn't matter if you're in a jungle in the Amazon or if you're in a jungle in New York City. If you're in Bel Air or Bangladesh, doesn't matter. If you don't have an ego that's attuned to the environment and society you live in, you will be wiped out quickly. It keeps us alive. It's a survival mechanism. So all the spiritual teachings, all the traditions of the New Age movement, they tell you, oh, you have to kill your ego. You have to just get rid of it. And only do this. Are basically, and there's no nice way to say this, and I apologize to those of you for whom this is a shock, but you cannot kill your ego. If you do, you will die. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. You will not be able to do any kind of work either on the horizontal Malkuthian physical world plane or the higher work of higher consciousness to work with the higher planes. It's not possible. Think of the ego as a wild horse. It's running around crazy. You're trying to hitch up this wild horse to your wagon and pull it, or you're trying to put a saddle on it, ride it, and it's just out of control, right? So, oh, well, they said I have to kill my ego. So you take out your gun, you go over to the horse's head and go bang. Plop. Right? Now, you try to get on and ride it, and you hitch it up to the wagon, you try, go. It won't work. You're dead. The ego is dead. What you have to do with the ego is you have to tame it. You have to train it. You have to become partners with it. And by you, I mean your higher self, your essence, more specifically, the essential self, needs to work in partnership with the ego and tame it. And not in the term or the analogy of breaking a horse, where you beat it into submission. It's done more like the horse whisperer, where you learn to speak its language, you teach it yours, and you show it that there's a higher possibility if you work together in partnership. So that's what we need to do. But that first reaction of the ego, when exposed to those higher radiations, is what?
Fear.
Bingo. Ding, ding, ding. Gold star for the woman with the golden light and the golden hair.
I think that's me, because you're golden.
You are golden light. I've seen it.
Yeah. The first reaction is fear. So when you deliberately wake up, which you were on the path of deliberately waking up, of going into the higher planes, the very first step is you expose yourself to these higher radiations, this higher consciousness. And the first reaction is always fear, until you understand what's going on. And you're like, oh, this is the refiner's fire. I usually describe it as turning iron into steel, right? You have to deliberately put ourselves into the fire and then get pounded on the anvil. And then just for fun, we do it again and again and again and again. It's burning the dross, right? So we've been training that. Now imagine this is going on out there in the world and people have no clue. They've never been exposed to esoteric principles because our society has been withholding them for thousands of years. So everything you see in the media, in politics, in government, pick an issue, any one of the divisive issues, it's important to understand this is being choreographed deliberately. Sometimes there's random events that just serve the higher purpose. So Roseanne gets on tweet and makes a racist tweet, and that's a great excuse for the left to just can her, and knowing full well that it will upset the people on the right. And then you get that comedian Samantha Bee coming out for no apparent reason and calling President Trump's daughter a feckless C-word, right? The fill in the blank, the part of the female anatomy that's it's worse than the F word these days. For no good, it's like, okay, you have a problem with President Trump's policy. Fine, call President Trump the C-word if you want. But why pick on his daughter for posting a pro-family, here I am posing for a picture with my baby? Saying, oh, your dad will listen to you. It's like, yeah, right. Could you imagine President Trump really listening to anybody? Not much. Every one of those events is being very carefully choreographed, and they don't even really care which way the chips fall on any one of these. Right? So, the NFL has players protesting against racism that's rampant in society. Great. We can talk about how effective that plan for a protest is as a separate issue. But now they came out with a policy that says, oh, you can't do that anymore, or we'll fine your team and we'll fine you. But they gave them out. You just don't come out on the field. Or if you're out on the field warming up, go back in the locker room, and then when the anthem's over, come back out. The whole thing is choreographed to create division. Racism. It's all choreographed to create division. And this is long. This has been going on a long time, right? So, race, the economy, the rich versus poor, the black versus white, the gender, male, female, are you both, are you neither?
The dreamers. And
Yeah, the immigrants, you know. That should be an easy problem to solve. All you need is the dreamers need to hire an attorney and sue the government. Because all the paperwork that they came in with constitutes a contract. And it doesn't matter that a different president was in office when the contract was signed. That contract represents an agreement between the U.S. government and those immigrants. It's like, oh, you want to draw the line and say, okay, you're a legal immigrant, you're an illegal immigrant, fine. These are legal immigrants. They're here legally. Right? They don't care about that. They're being played as pawns. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk more about pawns in a minute. They're being played as pawns because it isn't that the values we think the country holds and we're being held accountable for are not the values that the people above the government and maybe even above the oligarchy, those are not the values that they hold. Their value right now is to create division, to prevent unity. So, the dreamers, out they go. Throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? Mm-hmm. It's a contract. The government signed a contract. These guys have held up their bargain, so you sue them for breach of contract. And they would win. But you don't see that happening now because the whole goal is to create division. So why these people aren't just filing that lawsuit, I don't know. It's obvious, that answer. When you look at it from a neutral, higher perspective, you look down and you see what they're doing. It's just to create division. Mm-hmm. And this is part of the awakening of the world. We're more concerned about the awakening of this continent. Why? Well, because we live on this continent. I care about Europe. I care about Asia. Mm-hmm. I care about Africa. I even care about Australia, despite the fact they're all upside down and backwards. Oh, wait. Oh, man. I forgot the Earth is flat, right?
No, but they debunked that thing about the toilet water going backwards. So.
Who debunked it?
I don't know, but I saw a meme about it.
You saw a meme about it, huh? Did you ever watch a video?
No. But I know there was a couple other. It was like 8 things that have been debunked, and is it good?
Yeah,
okay.
It's cool enough to drink, and I like that tea. It's good for my throat. As an aside, I don't know which version of the water going backwards you thought was debunked. Mm. What is the physics principle upon which the water circling in the sink is based?
Centrifugal force?
Almost. It's called the Coriolis force, which is based on a rotation of the Earth. Okay. I believe it was World War I. There was a naval battle between the British and the Germans in the southern hemisphere. And once upon a time I could have told you the name of the battle, the name of the ships involved, and where exactly it took place. The important thing is it was south of the equator. Now the Coriolis force is basically the side effect of rotation. So if you shoot an artillery shell 10 miles, while you fire it in a straight line, but while it's in air, the Earth rotates under it. And so it appears to bend, and it appears on a map that it curved. Mm. That's one reason we know the Earth is round, and it's rotating on an axis.
I always tried, when I was a little girl, to jump up at the air and see if the Earth would move out from under me.
It would work if you could jump high enough.
Yeah.
And the length, and it is in fact happening to an extent, except down here, the air is dense enough that you really don't move much. Mm. because the air is moving. You have to get up high enough. Anyway, I could draw the force vectors, but I'm talking about the Coriolis force vectors. Right. So the way the Coriolis force works is things bend to the right in the northern hemisphere, they bend to the left in the southern hemisphere. Okay. And in this naval battle, the British did not take that into account. The Germans, being the ruthlessly efficient engineers and scientists that they are known for, then and now and every moment in between, they did. To say that the British artillery on those ships couldn't hit the broad side of a barn is a gross understatement. They couldn't even hit the right ocean. They were missing their target by hundreds of yards. The German naval artillery did not miss. To say they made mincemeat of the British is a gross understatement. The British turned and ran away as the ships that didn't sink ran away as fast as they could, and upon further review after the fact with their 20/20 hindsight, even the British figured out that they had the Coriolis force reversed. So there are forces at work, whether we see them or not, right? And that same is true of these higher radiations that we are exposing to. And my key message about this is it's only going to get stronger. So you're going to feel more of this confusion. You're going to feel more of this agitation. You're going to see more of the fear-based reactions from every facet of society, from government, from corporations, from individuals. On every divisive issue, you're seeing the polarity get farther and farther. So the people, you used to have a huge group of people in the middle and a small group on the left and a small group on the right. But what you're seeing is everything's polarizing. There's no room left in the middle. The society, at least the way the society is choreographing this, they're trying to force everyone, one way or the other, and they're trying to force everyone to take sides. Either you're a liberal or you're a conservative. And it's like, I haven't been a liberal or a conservative in 20 years. I was a libertarian, it's outside on another spectrum. And then when I saw that, well, the libertarians have this wonderful theory, it's all theory. They actually don't put anything into practice. I saw that in one of the presidential elections, I'm going to say 92. I had moved to LA, so this is when I lived in LA. And I thought, there's an election coming up in a few months. I'll go volunteer with the Libertarian Party. I was still in that playing the world that we think is supposed to be in place mode then. And the Libertarian Party says, we're too busy getting ready for elections. We can't have meetings. We can't have anybody over here to help. It's like, do you hear yourself? I even said that. Do you hear yourself? You're so busy that you can't have help? You don't want help? And they're like, well, it's like, look, if I called the Republicans or I called the Democrats and said, I want to help, they would jump on it. They would say, we need you to go door to door. We need you to stuff envelopes. We need you to make phone calls. We need you to go help support this appearance. Be a grunt hauling stuff around to put up a booth, whatever. It's like, and you're telling me you don't want to do any of that? And then you look at that over and over and over again. All the people said they believed in libertarian principles, but they were running these lame candidates for office. And so I saw that, and that was kind of like my last, the last straw of me waking up to the politics. I looked at that and I said, okay, they're lame too. So then I was an independent, and then when you look at the choreography of the political process, and this last presidential election was incredible, right? When you saw the Democrats in particular I'll talk about the Republicans in this last election in a minute. You saw the Democrats knowingly, willingly telling the world, yes, we interfered with elections at the level of the Democratic National Committee, and we don't care. It's our right to, we're a private organization, we can break all our own rules if we want. We can commit fraud, and it's okay because we said so. Right? That's what the Democrats did. Zero accountability even now, 2 years later. The Republicans, meanwhile, they threw up a slate of, 15, 18 candidates during the primaries. Every one of them was lame. Mm-hmm. I'll bet you right now today, you can't think of a single Republican candidate other than Donald Trump who ran in that last election. Because they were lame nobodies. Oh, they may have been congressmen or senators or other officials, governors. But they were so lame. And then look at the pretended shock of the Republicans when Donald Trump won the nomination. How could this happen? Right? That was the pretended acting. And they were bad actors. All of them. He was the only candidate who was known outside the narrow political circles of the Republican Party. Every single person in America knew who Donald Trump was. Mm-hmm. The minute he said he was going to run, of course he was going to get the election. And this was 9 months before a year, something before the election was held. As soon as he threw his hat in the ring, he was guaranteed the Republican nomination. So anything that was in the news, in the media, on the internet, contrary to that, was part of the deliberate ploy of the social engineering to brainwash and entertain the public into thinking they had a choice. A year before the election, a full year, every poll I read said if Trump ran against Clinton, he would win. And yet the Democrats were shocked and surprised and, oh, Hillary threw a temper tantrum when she lost. It's like, then she was foolish if that were true. And the temper tantrums probably took place, and they were probably part of the choreography of entertaining the public, entertaining that big mass of Democrat supporters, right? Every poll a year ahead of time said if Trump ran against Bernie Sanders, that Bernie Sanders would win. And in both of those cases, Trump, Hillary, turned out to be closer than the early polls said. And then it was Sanders, Trump. Probably would have been a little closer than the polls said. That's why Trump ran against Clinton. Because the powers that be said, you know, we don't want Sanders in. Too many people like him. It would create less division in the population. The far right wing who doesn't like equality and socialism or whatever you want to call it, they would have objected, but everybody else would have been happy. It would have been done too good a job of uniting the people. And this is the way we get played. This is the way they are using this fear energy against us. So yeah, that last election was a good example of that. What you need to know is every time you feel that agitation, every time you feel what we call the reverberations, or the verbs, of that mild to severe electric vibration, magnetic tingling throughout your whole body, your mind, you can't concentrate. Every time you feel yourself being sucked down and want to go to sleep for no apparent reason, in the middle of the day, in the evening, in the morning, it doesn't matter when. You need to understand that in the moment, that is a response of your ego, of your biological machine, to being exposed to these radiations of the Nawal. This is the response to being on the verge of truly waking up. To use EJ's terminology, you are right up against the chronic state, where you are awake, and that's your moment of opportunity. If you allow yourself to be sucked down into sleep, either actual physical sleep or metaphoric sleep, if you buy into the fear, if you buy into the anger, you're missing the opportunity to wake up. And furthermore, you're missing the opportunity to help others recognize what's going on and to help them wake up. This is a time when it becomes very, very important to engage in that which is important and not merely that which is interesting. I've talked about this a little in the past. But there's a lot of things in life that people put on their bucket list. Oh, I want to go see Niagara Falls. Well, I've seen waterfalls that may not be quite as wide, but they're 2 or 3 times higher. So, which is bigger, which is better, wider or longer? I don't know. So, the odds are I may never see Niagara Falls. I'm okay with that. Or I may never visit the continent of Antarctica. Be kind of cool to see emperor penguins in the wild. I've had this affinity with penguins all my life. I've had an affinity with birds all my life. Mm-hmm. From the little tiny finches that my aunt gave me that I raised as a kid, to identifying all the wild birds that came through our yard and visited our bird feeders at different times a year, to being absolutely fascinated with parrots and macaws and things from the time when I was 9 years old, and we visited Busch Gardens in the San Fernando Valley, which eventually got sold and turned into housing tracts because somebody made more money on it. And apparently the other part of the story I heard was Busch Gardens was in the San Fernando Valley right off the 405 freeway near a Busch Brewing Company beer factory. And they had this garden out there with exotic plants and animals, and you went and toured, and it was lovely. And they had a bird show. Trained parrots, trained cockatoos, trained macaws. It was excuse me, it was wonderful. And then it got all plowed over. But I knew, even at that age, 9 years old. No, I'm sorry, that was 8. Because that was 1969. And I knew I was going to have parrots one day. And I do. I've had a parrot for... Well, I've had him over 25 years, 26 or 7 years, and he's 7 years older than that. So yeah, I have a parrot. My totem, my shamanic totem, is the golden eagle. I've had affinities for eagles and hawks and all of those all my life. So we need to focus on what's important. Is it important for me to go see Niagara Falls? No, probably not. It will not further my true will, at least not so far as I know right now. So Antarctica, the penguins, I even had penguins at, what's that place down on the edge of San Diego with all the sea creatures? That SeaWorld?
SeaWorld.
I had penguins following me around. They literally had one get out of the cage. It like climbed up these rocks. It saw me, and it followed me back and forth, and it climbed up and it jumped onto the top lip. And then somebody else, I guess, scared it and pushed it back and went back in the water. But it was following me, right? I'd love to go see emperor penguins in the wild. Is it worth the $10,000 it would take for me to put together a trip to go to Antarctica to see the emperor penguins on their march? No. Somebody gives me $10,000 today, that wouldn't be in the top 100 things to do with that money. Because it's interesting, but it is not important for me to do on my true will path. In the Toltec world, the first thing we teach is to have an intent for everything that we do. The second thing about intent is to have an intent that furthers your true will. Not just your interesting physical world wants. So how do you do that? We work with attention. We're out in our garden working. I'll talk more about the garden in a bit. We put all our attention into raking or weeding or hoeing or moving rocks. There's a lot of rock movement right now in our garden as we rebuild this labyrinth. We hold the intent, the higher purpose of what this labyrinth medicine wheel is doing, how it connects to the Toltec lineage, how it connects to Coyote's medicine wheel, how all of this creates a grid that's helping waken the continent, right? That's our intent. We put all our attention into that is of moving that rock 6 inches so I can get the weeds out from under it, and then putting the rock back as if that's the only thing that matters in the universe, and is my success as a human this lifetime depends on that one act. So when we face these radiations and we're feeling that agitation and we're feeling the anger, we have to remember we're being played. Just like pieces in a chessboard. Do you want to be the pawn or do you want to be the queen? Do you want to be played or do you want to step outside the game and become the player? That's your options. I'll explain more about the chess pieces next, but that's an important concept in the Matrix movies. The only one that was well thought out was the first. And the one scene in the first Matrix movie about the red pill or the blue pill, where Morpheus gives Neo the choice of waking up or going back to sleep. That one scene is worth the price of admission on that movie. But the other two there's a Matrix 2 and a Matrix 3, and they get increasingly worse. In the third movie, kind of the climactic scene is when Neo finally gets into the behind-the-scenes world and confronts the architect. A metaphor for God, a metaphor for the program that's running all the machines in the physical world that have created the Matrix to keep the humans enslaved. And he's shown the video evidence that he's been reincarnated. This keeps happening over and over, and he gets a choice of saving his girlfriend or saving some of his people. But neither one is a good choice, but it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't choice. And Neo's huge mistake and the big failing of all those movies other than the first one, for having anything really useful as a spiritual message for teaching, was that Neo bought in to the premise of the question of having only choice A or choice B for his actions. You can save your girlfriend or you can save your people, some of them. But that's it. Those are your two choices. Those are the choices offered by your opponent, right? And he accepted the premise of the question. He missed the opportunity to step outside the game and become the player. He had the opportunity at that moment. He could have become the architect. And the movie didn't go there. Perfect teaching opportunity. And they all missed it. Neo missed it, the architect, everybody, whoever put that movie together, you flunked. Mm-hmm. So in this chess game that we're engaged in, where we've been forced through our affinities, our proclivities, to accept the white piece or the black piece analogy, we're still players on the board, or pieces on the board. And we need to wake up and look around and say, hey, I'm a piece on the board, I'm going to be the player. It's interesting. The pieces on the chessboard have interesting names and interesting styles of movement. So the king, yeah, it represents a king, it represents the kingdom, it represents the culmination of all our work. So from the standpoint of the universe, oh, Malkuth, kingdom. Keep in mind that, I apologize that you can't see this, our camera configuration was an experiment tonight, and so we'll do better next time, which is in 2 weeks, not next week because I'm traveling. So from the standpoint of the universe, we're all trying to get down here to the kingdom, right? So that's what the king represents. It represents the kingdom. The queen, however, does not represent the queen. The queen, as a chess piece, historically represents the queen's guard. That little band of the best, most trusted knights that the king would assign to protect his queen when he was gone. He's off fighting a battle. These are the guys, maybe they're older, maybe for whatever reason he doesn't need them on the battlefield, unless the battlefield is at his own gate, and then it kind of is a moot point. But if you can't be there to personally protect your queen, you want the toughest, most badass, pardon my expression, knights to protect your queen. That if any attacker decides to get in there, kidnap the queen, whatever, these are the guys who could take out 10 to 1, 20 to 1, and they would win, right? And you've got that core group. That's what the queen represents. It's the most powerful piece on the chessboard because that's what it's representing, is that group of the most powerful knights in the realm. The next piece down the board is the bishop. The bishop on the chess piece does not represent the bishop or the pope or any of those things that are commonly explained. What it does represent, which you should know, do you remember? The bishop represents a squadron of Templar knights.
That's right.
Throughout the history of Europe, there has not been a fighting group that was more feared and more devastating in battle than the Knights Templar. These are the guys that the British, I'm sorry, there were no British at this point. The English were attacking and engaging in battle against the Scots, who were fighting for their freedom yet again from the English. And the Scots, of course, were outnumbered. Until the whole English army turned tail and ran away. Run away, run away. Just like Monty Python. Because over the hill came one small group of perhaps at most a few dozen Templar Knights in full battle armor as Templar Knights. And this was after the time when the Templar Knights had been disbanded by the Pope and they were under a death sentence in every country in Europe except Scotland. Why not Scotland, you ask? Well, because the Scottish king had already told the Pope, up yours very much, and he had already been excommunicated by the Pope, so it's sort of like I'm not going to take any guff from you. And so a couple dozen Templar Knights show up, going to fight on the side of Scotland, and the whole English army ran away. That's how badass the Templar Knights were. That several thousand English knights and foot soldiers would rather run away than face a few dozen Templar Knights. Think of that. That's the bishop on the chessboard. Next over is the knight. That one's close. The knight represents basically a whole squadron of cavalry. The English were famous for their what's called heavy cavalry, what we now call draft horses for pulling plows and beer wagons. Excuse me. Were bred to be bigger, stronger, heavier boned, so they could carry around fully armored knights into battle. They were never intended to be the fastest horse on the face of the earth or to be the most maneuverable. They were designed to carry a heavy load and run in a straight line. And when you had a whole line of these, usually 2 lines at least, going straight at, didn't matter how many foot soldiers you had, the heavy cavalry would mow them down. That's the knight on the chessboard. The rook isn't a rook, it's a castle. Oh, I castle. That's when you do a move on chess called castling. That's what you call it, and it looks like a castle in most chess sets. But it's not. Castle is mobile. The rook is the castle is fixed. If you build a castle, that's where it sits. I built it in a swamp and it sank. So I built another one in the swamp and it sank. And I built another one in the swamp, but that one stayed up. But anyway, they're all right there. You know? Castle on castle on castle in the swamp. And if you don't know where that line and joke came from, shame on you. You can't be a Toltec if you don't learn the humor of Monty Python. That's the rules, at least in this Toltec school. No, the rook is a siege tower. These are the siege tower that you roll up to the castle wall and batter down the door or batter down the parapet, or just have ladder high enough that they're climbing up. They can't be shot off because it's enclosed on at least 3 sides. And you climb up and that's how you got over the wall, was with the siege tower. So castles responded by putting moats, so you couldn't do that. And then the attackers responded by building portable bridges that they would roll up and go plop, and it would span the moat, and then they'd roll the siege tower over. And so then they started oil and shoot flaming arrows and burn the siege tower. So then they made them out of metal, and then by that time they got over that whole period because why?
Cannons.
Cannons. Isn't she good? Say that again.
Cannons. Everything went out the window when cannons came in.
Everything went out the window when cannons came in. So cannons came in, and that all became irrelevant. But the pawns on the chessboard, they represent pawns. They represent that foot soldier. They represent the puppets. The puppet masters would like all of us to be puppets. And as long as you buy into the duality, and by buying into duality, you accept the premise of the question of the meme as it comes through. The Republicans post a meme about how mean and awful the Democrats are because of any one of 1,000 valid reasons. The Democrats, meanwhile, are posting memes that the Republicans object to for any one of 1,000 valid reasons. So Republican memes have thousands of valid reasons. Democrat memes have thousands of valid reasons if and only if you accept the premise of the exception that there's either a right or a left. There's lots of memes that warn us the left hand and the right hand belong to the same person, or the left wing and the right wing belong to the same bird, right? The same puppet master. The left hand and the right hand is pulling all the strings. Don't do that. If you're going to post a meme, post it in a way that you include a message to try and wake people up. You yourself need to be waking up. Those radiations are coming in. They're triggering your buttons. All those little hot buttons. I could probably pick 2 or 3 each for my audience here tonight.
We're too tired to be poked.
Want to bet? Oh, that's a challenge. They're too tired to be poked.
Yeah, you've done it.
I know. It's already getting hot in here, so.
Yeah.
That's resistance.
So, if you're going to do that, make sure you're doing it in a way that you don't accept the premise of the question. Make sure you say, you know, there's more than just Republican or Democrat. Especially, think about this. How many million people in the U.S. right now? Does anybody know? 200 or is it 250-ish? But I think it's more like 250. So we have 250 million people in this country. Think about this. We have scientists. We have literary geniuses. We have artists. We have musicians. We have engineers. We have entrepreneurs. Think of all those people. Brilliant people, talented people, smart people, caring people. And the best 2 that we could throw up to run for president was Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. Really? That's the best 2 that we wanted to, one of those to represent our country? That's where the American people should say, you know what? No, we're going to redo this. One change that might be possible is anyone who wants to run for political office, or to hold, let me put it this, anyone who wants to hold political office is automatically disqualified from holding a political office. You get drafted. Yvonne. Yvonne.
First Lady Yvonne.
You're gonna be a congressman for the next 4 years. You'll get your salary, you know, you'll be taken care of.
And I just sleep.
But no, you're gonna work. Oh, you're going to be a senator.
Lovely.
You are going to be, no, you're going to be governor. No eye rolls.
Over what?
Over the state. Governors rule states. You're the chief administrator office of the state of...
Can I switch states?
Jefferson. You can go to Jefferson.
Okay.
Okay? You can be the state of Jefferson. You don't have to go down there to California. Okay? But there's a lot of ways the political process could be fixed. The key that the American people need to understand is the political process they think is taking place is not the political process that is actually taking place. What's actually taking place is the puppet master corruption. And why everybody's having so much fear right now is the veil is thinning because of where the earth is in our 13,000-year cycle, and the veil is thinning and we're waking up. What the Toltec work is doing with all that is we are endeavoring to do a couple, three things. One is we're accelerating the rate at which people wake up. When we put out the message of independence and power and sovereignty and unity, that is the message that is not the most prominent signal going in to the collective consciousness right now. It's exactly the opposite. It's fear, it's division, right? We've been talking about that. So we are being exposed to these radiations of the Nawal. We are being exposed to this chaos, the reaction of which for most of the world right now is fear, because nobody's told them what's really going on. So I'm reminding us all tonight that that's what's going on. So every time either you or any of you experience those physical reactions, that agitation, you don't know why, that desire for sleep, that is the key moment in your attention, your awareness. To remember and recognize what's going on, what the source of that is, and just like the people in an esoteric fish group who volunteer to go into these radiations, you need to open yourself to it and take it and put all of your attention into that moment. Because that's where you are on the verge of waking up. You are on the verge of the chronic state. And every moment of every day is becoming an ultimate teaching opportunity / learning opportunity. How to handle those radiations. Anyone who starts to do the higher spiritual work and starts to wake up, absolutely positively, the first thing you will experience is those energies of chaos. You absolutely positively cannot wake up without going through those energies of chaos. It's just like the aircraft trying to break the sound barrier. You have to go through the shock wave that is the sound barrier if you want to get past it. There's no way to avoid it. We cannot avoid those energies of chaos. That's what the Toltec training is about. Partly what it's about. That's the first thing we have to do, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We have to recognize that when we are uncomfortable with all this, that's step one of waking up. And if you allow your knee-jerk reaction to run away, to go back to the comfort of the left is always right meme, or the right is always right memes, then you've just missed an opportunity to wake up, to step out of the game, to step off the chessboard and become the player. Or if the Neo Matrix analogy, for him to take out the architect and take over that job himself. Now, imagine a large group of people all doing that at once. All of us choosing to be comfortable with being uncomfortable so that we can wake up and put a much stronger, more amplified, more laser-like coherent signal into the human consciousness, the collective consciousness of humanity, about what's really going on and what to do about it, which is to wake up and don't accept the premise of the dualistic, divisory signals that we're receiving. You volunteered to be on Earth at this time.
I want to see that in writing.
Okay.
Short.
Let me go over this again. Let me explain it to you one more time. If you are here on Earth right now, you volunteered to be here on Earth right now. There's a waiting list. Mm-hmm. You are accepted before others. You're the first stringers, okay? Using a sports analogy. You're not the second or third stringers on the bench. You're not on the junior varsity team waiting in the spiritual wings for an opportunity to come in. You're here right now on the playing field. You're a first string. You're in the game. The most important thing you can do is
play the game.
Play the game how?
By being the player.
How?
And to get off the chessboard, to take the radiation and the energy that's coming in.
And do what?
And to wake up and accept the no, and to take the opportunity as a teaching to wake other people up. And
all good answers. And?
As if your life depended on it.
Why?
Because you can't leave anything on the field.
Good answer. Why? What's the ultimate objective for each of us?
To do our will.
We came here with a list of things to do that we agreed to. And on this list, there's one thing. One thing only. It's what we call in this school our true will. Your divine purpose, your dharma. Lots of names for it that mean the same thing. But we choose to call it our true will. It's our piece of the divine will for the creation of the universe, which is still ongoing. And we accepted a piece because humanity on this planet is at a key crossroads because of where we are in this photon belt. Humanity is still waking up from the sleep it brought upon itself roughly 15,000 years ago when, kaboom, Atlantis sank, remnants of humanity did their best to keep going, but not so much. So we're trying to wake humanity up. We're trying to get back to where we were before we messed up royally so that we can try to continue the human advancement, human evolution, the humanity organism, of which each of us is a cell in the humanity organism. There are higher purposes for humanity than just making McDonald's restaurants and watching the World Cup soccer matches. I actually was really, really happy to see the U.S. fail to qualify for the World Cup soccer tournament. Is that this year or next? I think it's this year, right? Anyway, I was actually happy to see Trump disinvite the sports hero Philadelphia Eagles to the White House. It's kind of a moot point. They'd already said they weren't going. So I'm disinviting you, right? Division, right? We don't like Trump, so we're not gonna go. Or most of the players said that. And so he said, well, I'm not gonna invite you. None of you get to go, right? It's more division.
You can't come to my party.
I'm not gonna invite you to my party. Me. Well, we're not gonna go. I mean, get over it. So here's a message to the NFL players out there. Your message that there is rampant racism against African Americans is 100% correct. There's rampant brutality going against all Americans, probably more against blacks than any other group, but it's happening.
Especially black men.
If you want to have a protest, I support your protest. But you need to make it a real protest. The NFL and all pro sports are being used as the great distractor. This was predicted in, what was it, the 30s or 40s or 50s, somewhere around there, when George Orwell wrote his book 1984, where pro sports, football in particular, was being used to placate the masses, just like the Roman circus was to placate the Roman populace during the time the Roman Empire was crumbling and falling.
The gladiators.
Yeah, the gladiator games. Oh, let's throw some Christians to the lions. Oh, what else could we do? They had to get bloodier and bloodier, more grotesque to keep the masses placated. So that's what NFL is being used for by our government. The NFL has been declared a not-for-profit organization because of its so-called public good that it does. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that we're not taxing because of its public good of distraction. So if you NFL players really want to make a statement, you really want to have a protest that's effective rather than divisive, because that whole, no matter what you think about trying to draw attention to the atrocities being committed daily against blacks. Why are you Detroit lying, people? Your city is falling apart. Chicago, your city has the worst crime in the country. You both have NFL teams. If all you NFL players want to have a real protest, opening day this fall, every one of you line up for the opening kickoff and then turn around and walk off the field in every game throughout the country. Shut down the NFL. And say you'll come back and NFL can happen when, have your list of all the things and all the changes you want to see regarding the police and law enforcement and education and on and on and on down. Put your list together. And every one of you who engage in that protest need to be okay with the probability that you will lose your jobs permanently and you will never get them back and you'll be giving up your $1 million plus salaries forever. You won't be. A protest, a real protest, isn't done for you. It's done for all the changes that come after you. The American Revolution against England, the vast majority of these people either died or lost everything and died penniless. It was rare, the person who came out of that war, from the common foot soldiers up to the general, who was able to have an effective life after that. Their kids, their children, their descendants, yeah, we created this free country that now we're in the process of tearing down. But if you want to have a real protest, make it real, make it effective, make it hurt. Bring it home. Walk off the field. Walk out to the TV cameras and tell the world, you're shutting down the NFL until we have true social justice and social change. You do that, and then come talk to me. Until then, you're just helping the division. You're helping the puppet masters, and you are preventing people from waking up and having true freedom. That's the reality of the situation. So, NFL, you want to talk more? I'll help organize it. Okay? Great. Back to our Toltec fish group.
What's an esoteric fish group?
An esoteric fish group. What's another name for a fish group? A group of fish that hang out together.
A school.
A school. It's an esoteric school. I'm using the term fish group for a reason. I'm trying to shock people out of their complacency. I am trying to help all the people who are formal members of this school realize and remember that they are formal members of this school. All of you. We have work to do as a school that's part of this waking up process. We have several activities that we need to be engaging in more effectively than we are.
Do you need some more hot water?
No, I'm good on the hot water. It's good. Now I'm just getting some lemonade. See, I'm magic because I'm doing this shamanic stuff. I take my lemonade, abracadabra, and I'm turning it into water. Not even Jesus did that. Okay? He just took water and turned it into wine. I took lemonade and turned it into water. I just do things different. We have a school that's not just intended for me to teach you stuff that you can learn to make your life better. Yeah, that's part of it. If you pay attention, there's the A word again, you will learn things that you can incorporate into your life and your life will get better. This esoteric fish group has a responsibility, though, to do things as a group that are impossible to do when we work alone. This is a process that accelerates your own personal development, and it accelerates the development of our whole fish group, and it accelerates the effect our fish group can have on humanity.
In other fish groups?
And it can help other fish groups, especially when other fish groups start working in conjunction with our fish group. So we have our labyrinth project in the garden. We built a labyrinth on this land when we first moved here. Well, we moved here in the late 2010, and we built the labyrinth in 2011. Yeah. And we built it in a very specific spot on our land. Excuse me. That is, that encompasses a natural energy vortex. So for those unfamiliar with energy vortices, it's part of the Earth's natural energetic field. Sedona, Arizona is famous for having a number of them in that area. The Native Americans in that region used them and knew them and used them. It became a New Age mecca in roughly the 1980s for, in part, those reasons. And Mount Shasta as a whole is a huge vortex. And just like any big vortex, off the side there's little eddies, and one of those little eddies is on our land. And so we've built a labyrinth around it. The average labyrinth, like all the famous ones where there's this circuitous path that's designed to put your mind in a state and you walk it with intention, the average labyrinth will help you in your processes in this physical world. It's a metaphor for life. You never know which way the path is going to turn. Sometimes, you know, the target is in the center of the labyrinth. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. Sometimes it seems like you're close, but you're really far away. Sometimes you're really far away, and then the next thing you know, around one corner, and boom, you're in the center. That's the average labyrinth. Ours is different. Ours is designed and built according to some patterns of our Celtic ancestry. It's a triple spiral, and its intent and meaning is the interweaving between this world and the higher planes. So when you walk our labyrinth and you spiral into the center, it puts your mind in a state that facilitates you being able to access the higher planes of consciousness, the higher realms. Our labyrinth includes a garden that we have used for medicinal herbs in the past. And a couple, 4 years ago, we went into a very long, 2-year-long drought here, where water was scarce, and we had to more or less shut down the labyrinth because of the drought. And the land started reclaiming it and the pathways. A lot of other reasons. We lost some help, not because we couldn't find them, but because they weren't as much help as we wanted, and we had to send them away. They weren't the right help. And so we didn't have the resources to maintain it. So now that we've had better winters, we have more water, and we've started our esoteric school here in the Toltec lineage. We're in the process of reactivating the labyrinth on the physical plane. It was always active on the energetic planes. Part of that process is we are adding some features to the outer ring to make it function, in addition to the Celtic spiral to access the higher planes, to include more of a traditional Native American medicine wheel around the perimeter. And this labyrinth is now linked to the medicine wheel on the property of Coyote the Blind, which is located in Riverside, California. Both of these are linked to the energy of the Toltec lineage. So Coyote's school is undergoing a great activity right now to endeavor to purchase the land upon which it sits. Their landlord decided that he wanted to sell the property, so they're endeavoring to raise some money for a down payment so they can buy it. When we work with attention on this labyrinth, we are putting energy through the higher planes into that project. We as an esoteric school, our fish group, has taken on an obligation to help with this project, not just through our physical labor on the labyrinth, but we're going to raise money to assist. So we are going to put together a fundraising project to assist that. And it has to be something that's chosen, planned, and executed by the school as a group. It's not just me, it's not just Bonnie or Yvonne, because we happen to be here tonight. It's all of us together have to do this, and it needs to happen soon. We need to get going on this right away. This is a big project that will work in several ways. We will be pogging with this. We will be connecting with each other. Even when we're not physically co-located, we're going to be working on this together. We have to plan it together. We will put together, if necessary, a video conference to work on some of this when we're in different locations. We are spread out over a very wide geographic area. From north to south and east to west, we're scattered over several counties here. So this is what we need to do. It'll help us individually. It'll help us as a school. It'll help us as a lineage. It will help wake up humanity. So all the problems or potential problems going on out there in humanity with the division and the puppet masters and the oligarchy and the fear that's running rampant around the world right now, this project will help all of that. So that's our project. So we are going to have a formal rededication ceremony on June 21st, which is the date of summer solstice. That's a very auspicious time for this activity. Between now and then, on the Wednesdays, we are in the process of doing physical work on the labyrinth. Were we going to do anything this Saturday on it?
We can. You leave the next day, and
Yeah.
the following Wednesday, I have to drive up to Oregon and pick you up. So I can work on Tuesdays with anybody that might want to.
So tomorrow is Tuesday. That won't work. I have to drive to Oregon for other things, and Bonnie has to work in town on a charity project. So tomorrow, no. But this Wednesday in the morning, yes, we will be here. We will be working on the labyrinth. And I encourage all students to come if you can. Anytime during the day, but especially in the morning. And the reason why the morning is better than the afternoon has to do with physics and solar radiations. In other words, it gets hot. The afternoon sun, the labyrinth is directly exposed to the afternoon sun up until about noon or 1 o'clock. Large portions of it are in the shade. You work when you want. I work in the morning when it's cool. And then in the afternoon, I have to drive to do other things. So that's the project. This school is taking this on. We're doing this work. All of the modifications that we're doing, all the physical modifications, will not be done by the 21st unless we get a big influx of people. So if this Wednesday, this Saturday won't work for you, but you want to come at a different time, just let us know. And if it's feasible at all, we will make arrangements to accommodate your request to come work at a different time. It's helping us, it's helping our school, it's helping your personal transformation. It is garnering you credit, aka good karma on the higher planes. It's assisting Coyote and his school save their medicine wheel. It's assisting the lineage, it's assisting humanity. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Any questions? Okay, the next activity that I want to announce and remind the students of is Saturday, June 16th. So today's a Monday, so that's just under 2 weeks away. Today's the 4th. Is another of our shamanic training days. There is an activity starting no later than 9 a.m. for our students. The first portion of that is open to students only. If you have formally committed to be a student in this school and you know who you are, be here no later than 9 a.m. on the 16th. There are some special activities involving a higher level Akadu initiation for you. It is not a level 4, but it is something else. And I will not tell you what that something else is until you get here. Sometime probably around 10:30, then we are going to begin a 2-part field trip. I've been threatening you with field trips for a while. The first part of the field trip is we are going over to the secret workshop of a secret shaman-like person. here in Mount Shasta who makes these crystal wands. This one is a 2-part black obsidian, mahogany obsidian ball on one end, and it's a brown mahogany obsidian point on the other. It's wrapped in deer skin.
Copper down the middle.
And it has a copper rod in the middle. Some of the ones, and this is one of the smaller varieties. If you were at the Bead Man with us, you saw some that were medium size, about this long. And if you think that's really medium size,
Yeah.
that's the long ones. The artist who makes these is a Kadwa level 2 holder named John Kirby, and he's internationally famous, and he was before he got the Akadwa. But since he's gotten the Akadwa, he has reported phenomenal success in terms of he can't keep these things in stock. He's shipping all over the world. We ran into him at the post office the other day, and he was shipping several more boxes of these wands of varying size to Japan.
Good for him.
He ships to China. He ships to Europe. He ships all over the U.S. He doesn't advertise. I asked, hey, give me some advertising literature. I'll put it out. No, I don't want it. I'm too busy. I don't have time to make what I have orders for now. So he invites small select groups to his workshop and his little showroom. And so on the 16th, you need to come and bring your checkbook, bring your wallet, bring your credit cards.
Buy a wand.
And he gives us a discount off retail. So when we bring groups over. So that's what we're doing, is these things. You will have an opportunity to meet John and to see if there's anything in stock that speaks to you and take it home with you, the ones that call to you. If not, if there's nothing in stock, he will show you his supply of raw materials. And you can pick your own stones, your own wood, your copper, the leather, the design, and you can custom order it, and he will make it for you to your specifications. I customize, I've had these custom made for other people in the past, and they're always phenomenal. So that's part one. We'll spend an hour or two there. And then we are going to go on the rest of the field trip, which is a shamanic walk to the underworld. We are going to a place called Pluto's Cave. Pluto's Cave is on the north slopes of Mount Shasta, just where it peters out and runs out into the plain. And it's an extremely powerful place. And your job when you come there is going to be to observe. It's to be the stalker, the chess player, and to observe and to interact with the space and the energies there. I've been there many times, and I know the way. I can't tell you the number of people we've tried to send there who get lost and don't find it. They wander in the desert for days. Sometimes their bodies are found, sometimes not. So it's important to go with a guide who's been there and knows the way and won't get you lost. So I will be taking you there. So the first activity of the day is students only. The visit to the secret workshop and to the cave trip is open to others who are holders of the Akadwa or not. It doesn't matter, but if you're interested in the work, the Toltec work, the Akadwa, you want to experience something to help you decide if a shamanic path should be part of your spiritual training, then it's welcome to us. You just contact us. And that is as far out as I'm going to make announcements right now. Any other questions?
So what's your suggestion on when the radiation's coming in really strong and you're dealing with it, but it's really kind of like it almost feels like a beat down.
I know what that. I went through that.
Yeah, and
I spent a year going through that, and because that wasn't enough fun, I did a second year doing that. Mm-hmm. Just for grins. So yeah, I understand.
Because every day it's been intense like that, and I know this is the. Let me lead into another question. I know that the world is waking up, and it's ascending, and we're ascending. So it almost seems like our job is to be in the forefront of taking the radiation, and like we're the heavy artillery people going through it, the heavy radiation, opening the way for others. Like we're the pawns, so to speak.
Almost. But we're not the pawns.
Well, maybe we're the Knights Templar.
That's the one I was going to say.
Yeah.
We're the Knights Templar. We're supposed to be the most badass knights on the battlefield. We are the way showers. We are part, and there's a lot of light workers out there who are doing their piece. And they're working with the light. They're trying to shine the light into dark places, and a lot of people are doing great work. In the shamanic path, if you can envision the yin-yang symbol, that black-white dot swirl pattern, there's a lot of people working with the light. The shamanic path, we work with the light and we work with the dark. We're the ones who have to go into the dark places that most will not go, either because they're afraid, or they're not trained, or they don't have the tools to defend themselves in dark places. Like the Knights Templar, who it was probably more like 2 or 3 dozen, let's say 3 dozen against thousands. Our mere presence will drive away forces of the dark. If we are true to what is right, and we hold the purity of the intent to work for the benefit of all beings everywhere. To work to awaken everyone. Not just the ones we like, not just the people whose hair color and hairstyles we approve of, not just the ones who bathe at the right frequency that we agree with, not just the ones who support our own political beliefs. We're working for everybody. And when we go to battle, yeah, we're the badasses on the battlefield.
So how can we take somebody's hand and tell them to be brave and take the radiation and not want to sleep, and people were whining, well, I'm so depressed, it's the government, it's this, it's that.
Well, do you remember the game show, the $64,000 question? It was the first game show that they had the pyramid where you answered questions, and it worked. I started with, I think it was like 1,000. You worked up, then it doubled, and then eventually the top of the pyramid was 64. So when you start doubling everything to powers of 2, that's what happens. You get to 64. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and then 64. And the $64,000 question was always the hardest. So how do you wake up people who don't want to be wakened up? That is the $64,000 question. And the reality is some won't. The way I have described this is I am speaking though to those who are ready and able to be awakened. I am not speaking to those who are not. So the best thing you can do is, number one, don't allow yourself to fall into the trap of duality. Of, yeah, we live in the polar opposite universe. We have to have electrons and protons to survive. So we're not trying to merge the two, because then the universe collapses. But don't buy into the left-wing, right-wing political dualism. Don't buy in to the fact that I'm black and you're white, or vice versa. Well, it's not black anymore. It's kind of gray. I guess that is a kind of a merging of the black and the white, you know.
Yeah, they're not represented.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a conspiracy. No one's representing the grays. I hear all about the blacks and the whites, but what about us grays?
Let's not get into the aliens.
Oh, why not?
I had a comment though about her comment about the Templars. You know, we've been talking about the small group, fighting group, you know, on a battlefield, but you know, one of the other contributions of the Templars were that they made a safe passage so the pilgrims could get to the Holy Land or wherever they were going. And so, you know, yeah, initially they were the badass force that went in and got in there, but then they were able to maintain this space so others could you know, so it was safe for them to do it. And so, and I see that very much as the work of the shaman, you know, to make a safe space so that others can learn and grow. Because otherwise you're just out there by yourself.
So maybe part of the esoteric school in the pog and the fishes is to be the guides for those who want to know how to handle the radiation that's coming in and go from there. You know, hopefully it'll lead to waking up and being more introduced to the know instead of the old paradigm of the to know.
The best thing that we can do is to lead by example.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay. Like Bonnie was about to say, we need to lead by example. We need to not succumb to the emotions of the ego portion of our biological machine. Specific activities, if you can read that. The human biological machine as a transformational apparatus. That is one of the books that is required reading in the school. It's on the list that every one of you got.
I still want to write it down.
Okay. It's about the process of waking up. It's about the process of how to handle yourself when you're up against the chronic. And yeah, it's basically you stand there, you take it, you keep your attention on the work at hand, and you do the work at hand, and you ignore the lure of the emotions, especially anger and fear, which are kind of 2 points along the same spectrum into fear. You ignore the physical sensations, the heat, the vibrations, the agitation, and you smile and you take it. And then you do your work, whatever your work at hand is. The best thing you can do for humanity is to do your true will. Remember that always. As Toltec warriors, our job is to be the way showers. It is to be the badass on the battlefield. And the battlefield right now for the world is fear. So show no fear. I've taught before the litany against fear from the shamanic series by Frank Herbert called the Dune series. It's a series of books. He wrote 3. It was called the Dune Trilogy. And then many years later, he came back and added 4 more books into the series. I think it was 4. And I think somewhere in this house, I have all of them in boxes of the paperbacks that I don't have bookshelf space for right now. It's a very shamanic series. It's in the recommended reading in the fiction section on my reading list. And it's all about shamanism. So the Litany of Fear, you can repeat to yourself. I memorized it when I was in junior high. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death which brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will allow it to pass over me and through me. When the fear has gone past, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. That's a really good description of what we have to do as Toltec warriors. Don't buy in to the premise of the divisory message that the U.S. government Department of Propaganda is pushing on us. You all know about the Department of Propaganda, right? There's some who would call it your evening news or mainstream media. All of which is bought, sold, and controlled by the powers behind the government. So it's controlled by the oligarchy. There is almost nothing in mainstream media you can believe. And I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, an Independent, or anybody. Just know that everything you're seeing there is false. The movie Wag the Dog is here. That's daily life in this world of fear-based. And what do you want to do when you're in fear? You try to control everything in your world. We're trying to control the weather. We're trying to control what they are trying to control what we think, what we eat, what we do, where we go, how we do it, every aspect of our life. That's all forms of fascism, whether you call it Nazism or fascism or anything else. It's fear. Whether you call it liberalism or socialism or communism, it's all about fear and an attempt to control what ultimately cannot be controlled, which is the waking up of the planet, the Earth's transition for the next 2,000 years through the photon belt, where humanity has this opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's not a guarantee that we are going to make that quantum leap up. It is not guaranteed. We must be diligent. We must do our work of accomplishing our true will. For those of us in this Toltec school, part of our true will is to work in this school, to be the way showers, to be the guides, to be the protectors, to be the warriors on the battlefield. Combating fear with sanity and truth. I can't remember the exact quote by Plato. It's something about these times, really, about when in a time of fear, the person who tells the truth becomes the world's greatest enemy or something like that. People fear the truth. They'd rather have the comfortable lies. And so we have to stand fast, and by our actions, by our example, by our demonstrations, we have to show that yes, the world is round. Yes, there is a Coriolis force. Yes, the British Navy really got their butts kicked by the Germans in World War I because they screwed up royally by not remembering that the polarity reversed when you cross the equator. That was their mistake. Our mistake is to buy in to the dumbing down, to buy in to the bogus education that's being foisted upon us, to buy into the racist division actions by the government, to realize that the government is not serving and protecting the people anymore, if it ever did. I would say at least since the time of World War I, that concept ended.
Isn't that kind of what Coyote, the blind, was talking about? With, instead of looking at the face of somebody you know, you can look at the face of what's going on.
Yeah.
And see the real face and tear it down. And also too is the Earth, the photon belt. Is that like the Earth's assemblage point?
No, not exactly. It's more, if you want to use a metaphor for the microcosm, it's more radiations and stronger radiations coming through the assemblage point. It's the radiations that come through. We're exposing ourselves more deliberately. In the school, we do this deliberately. We're exposing ourselves to more of the radiations of the Nawal. The Earth is getting more whether it wants it or not. And that's the important point to memorize. We're getting it, you are getting it, the whole world is getting these radiations, and because they haven't been trained properly, because they've allowed this, we, the people, have allowed this to happen where the masses don't know what I'm telling you. It's not being taught in public schools. Therefore, they don't know what's happening, they don't know how to handle it. They haven't been trained. Half the world has been secularized to the point they don't believe in God, they don't believe in higher powers, they aren't aware of the higher planes of the universe, therefore they don't do anything to learn to train themselves to communicate with the higher planes of the universe. They don't realize they have a higher self, they have an essential self, your I am presence, whatever you want to call it, in whatever spiritual tradition you follow. They don't know that. Nobody told them. They should have been told. In the Toltec philosophy, that education starts the day they're born. Children are the most precious resource. Why do you think the governments are splitting up families and taking children away? Why do you think the Palestinian children are under attack? Why do you think everywhere that a family is under attack? Because they're trying to take away the children and either use them for horrible purpose or to brainwash them into not learning this in part. But ultimately, this is what they don't want to learn. They don't want children, they don't want the next generation knowing this. This is our piece of the revolution, is to teach people this. That's what we need to know. That's what we need to teach. And to get better at it, we, the school, have to show up. We have to engage in your daily personal practice, your daily attention exercises. Get together with fellow students outside the Monday discussions, outside our periodic shamanic weekend workshops. Meet somebody and do those drills we worked on in the shamanic weekends. Work on your attention. Work on working with an intent. Work on your stalking skills. Work on the dreaming. Do your journaling. Doing that every day is an act of revolution, and it will help humanity. That's my message to my students in this school, is now is the time to engage and do all this. Now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when you get back from your interesting activities, but now. Did that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Any online? Doesn't look like it. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Please come help in the labyrinth this Wednesday morning. We can work on Saturday morning, and other times contact us, email toltecshamanicarts.org. If you click on the Golden Eagle Discourses section, you will find contact information for our email, and do contact us if you would like to come participate in saving humanity by working in our labyrinth, linked to the lineage, linked to the Coyote's labyrinth to help him save that so that we can all do our work.
Medicine wheel. You called it a labyrinth.
Oh, Coyote's medicine wheel. We have a labyrinth, he has a medicine wheel. And energetically they are linked to the Toltec lineage in ways that are complicated and beyond what we can talk about tonight. But if you come here and work, you'll get more information. I promise you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you for tuning in, or if you're watching this on tape delay, thank you for watching, and do get in touch, and we will see you in 2 weeks.